Hello, guys. Hi. Hello, my lovely little jack-o'-lanterns. And welcome to another live stream of the Sirens Call audiobook. So, today we're going to be doing chapter 13, which is the escape part in the story, which is in part 7, The French Saint. It is not going to be very long. It's about 40 or 42 minutes or so. So this is probably only going to be an hour stream, but this is from now on. We will be just doing a chapter stream because that's pretty much what happens. Is there's just each chapter is like super duper long, so it's just made for like a stream, a chapter. So that's how it's going to be from now on. I also want myself some delicious popcorn to munch on while we listen to this. It's pretty good. And then we will, because then I gotta go watch Vikings with my girlfriend. So very, very important, you see. So very exciting stuff. Well, I don't know if I'm gonna be. I'm so irregular with it. I'll say I'll do a stream 2 days and I'll do it the next day. I'll say I'll do a stream tomorrow and I don't do it for 4 days. Like, I'm pretty irregular by it, and I apologize. It just depends on like when I can do it with my schedule. I just try to do it as regularly as I can. But yeah, so probably the next stream, which would technically be chapter 14, will be I need my book. It'll be technically either tomorrow or 2 days from now. So we will definitely do chapter 14 soon. But right now it's chapter 13, where the pirates finally escape the colony, escape Van Vliet's mansion. They escape all the hell that they've been through. Even though poor young William Stanley has been murdered and chopped up, at least Cog gave him a burial, but they're basically going to escape. So it was this whole epic scene. So yeah, and some two good friends, two captains, helped them out. So it's very, very exciting. This personally is one of my favorite. I don't know. I love, like, personally, I like long fight scenes, like just like in movies and in books. It's just so cool to me to watch it just like happen for so long instead of just like a 2-minute fight scene where people punch each other, like stab each other, and then that's it. Like gunfights, stabbing, sword fighting, jump, like it's just parkour, everything. Just this huge fight scene that lasts like 30 minutes. Like, it's just crazy to me. I like that stuff. Anyway, let me get the book and then we'll start it. Oh, yeah, I hurt my foot pretty bad 2 days ago, so not fun. Oof. All right, guys. Flip to it in the book. All right, so we're on part 7, The French Saint, page 341. Here we go, guys. Here we go. So this is middle of November, 1680, Jabberwocky Estate.
Today was the last message being brought by a folder now to Marquis' ship. We were taking careful risk, but we needed to get the message out today. We were losing so many men, and we were worried that Slow John was going to come upon us very soon, and I knew we couldn't survive him. As me, Dan, and Tim worked on the scaffold, and Jeb and Finn worked on the wall below us, with Hugo gazing us with his hounds, I casually, without anyone seeing, looked beyond the yard in the day, looked beyond the south to see the slave quarters, knowing a Thulda had to make it across the yard in the day without anyone seeing it. All our hearts were nervous for him. For the first hour, he didn't appear, but then I saw the black man scurry across the yard with the note clutched in his left palm while the guards were facing us. Go, go, I whispered. Suddenly, Hugo looked up towards Thorda's direction, and I gazed at the steps of the castle to see Zucchina delivering water for the workers. My body froze. Hugo then noticed the slave darting. Hey, we have a runaway! He's breaking for it! Hugo snarled. No, I croaked. The guards spun around to see Thorda darting across the yard as all work ceased. Then, in a split second, a guard cocked his musket, aimed it at the running black man, and fired. Thorda dropped dead in the grass, the note fluttering out in his hand. My heart stopped. The guard started to hurry over to dead Thorda. I then heard Zucchina scream in horror over by the steps. Shut up, slut! Hugo growled and pulled a pistol from his waistband and aimed it at her. He fired the pistol as it smoked hot and hit Zucchina straight in the neck. Blood flew as she stumbled back and rolled down the stone steps, making the workers jump, dropping their tools. Now! I screamed, overcome with the death of the two family members. I stood up and took a mallet and whacked Hugo in the head, making him pass out cold as blood leaked from his scalp. Daniel and Tim used hammers to smash in the guards' heads as we ran down the scaffold. Jeb and Finn tried to attack the guards, but they were overpowered and forced to their knees with muskets cocked at their heads. By the time we made it down the scaffold, the guard who shot Thorda had gotten the note. He read it and then shouted, It's those pirates! They plan to escape for it! Two guards cocked their muskets from behind us as I heard Hugo stumble up, shaking his throbbing head. He growled as he descended the scaffold. Once he came around in front of me, he punched me in the gut, making me stumble out of breath. So, this is your big plan, huh? To kill us and escape? Well, guess what? You failed. He laughed as his dogs barked furiously from the rail the leashes were attached to. All the workers were too frozen in fear to move from their stations. I gazed at Finn and Jeb on the ground, muskets aimed at their heads by 5 Dutch guards behind them. Hugo then looked to the gibbet. String up these two first. He referred to me and Dan. Wait, no! Tim struggled, but one guard knocked him to his stomach. 2 guards bound our hands with leather cords and dragged us to the noose gallows. My heart throbbed in fear looking at Dan and seeing that our plan to get Marquis had failed. Within a minute, they tied 2 nooses and tightened them around our necks, and with our wrists bound in front of us. Daniel! Henry! Finn screamed in fear. It's all right, son. Stay strong, Jeb growled. I looked across the courtyard at the workers watching this whole thing, and Hugo smiling to himself with blood dripping down his face. They tightened the ropes around our necks. I watched the guard cross the planks and grip the lever. My heart stopped as I looked at Daniel and we met eyes. Oh, I'll see you in the afterlife, my friend. Dan grinned through tears. Suddenly, I heard a crash from the far wall. I looked up to the castle iron gates to see a huge carriage barrow in with 4 horses, with 4 men on top with muskets. Behind the carriage, in flooded a herd of 140 French sailors, firing their muskets, shooting up all the workers in the courtyard. The smoke filled the air and the musket pop rang. Leading the charge was Marquis himself, striding in a long blue trench coat, his purple pants bright in the sun, and he grinned under his blue captain's cap. Cortez followed behind him in a black coat with red pants, holding a cutlass. Welcome to France! Marquis laughed loudly and fired his flintlock pistol, killing a guard a few feet in front of him. Everyone was shook by the storm, and most of the guards had no time to react and fell dead in the heat. Soon they came to their senses and charged into the herd of green jackets, workers and pirates, with pistol shots and sword swipes. A smile formed across my face as did Daniel. I watched Finn, Tim, and Jeb headbutt the guards, making them drop, and they picked up the muskets and charged into the fray. The whole courtyard was littered with green jacket and musket pop, and white smoke and blood as they fought against each other. Marquis saw us hanging on the top of the gallery and fired at the shocked guard, whose body tumbled back, knocking the lever down. Shit! I yelled, Marquis, you bastard! My neck clung and tightened as my body plummeted as the plank opened below my feet, my boots. The rope contracted my neck, and I couldn't breathe as I struggled, swinging side by side as my vision blurred. Then, with one swift motion, I felt my body drop and I face planted, face first into the dirt. I shattered, choking and coughing in the mud, with my lungs getting air back in. Tim and Finn hurried over as Jeb was busy sword fighting a soldier. Tim cut my ropes with a knife to free my hands, and I threw the noose around my neck away. Finn hurried up and cut Daniel free with a sword. Dan and Finn stumbled down the wooden platform steps with great smiles. That's the French captain you speak of? Finn asked. Boy, he came after all, Daniel smiled. Tim tossed me and Daniel 2 muskets, a sack of black gunpowder and lead balls. Shoved them in my pockets and cocked the musket. We rose into the sunlight, running across the courtyard with open our hearts. 4 months we were stuck in this pit of hell, witnessing murder and hardship, and now we're about to break free to heaven. We stopped near the carriage, which was littered with fuse and powder kegs. Is this thing going to blow up? Daniel asked amazed. Aye! Marquis laughed, stabbing a soldier in the gut and spinning around to face me, his black locks dripping with blood. He stuck out his hand. Pleasure to meet you again, Henry, Tim, and Daniel. As he shook our hands fast and pointed at them. This is Finnish spell. The Marquis interrupted him, kicking down a man in the stomach, and stabbed him in the penis and dragged the blade up his belly as blood poured. He yanked the blade out, oozing with red, and smiled back. How about we do the introductions when you're aboard my ship and sailing? He smiled. Good idea, Daniel said. Now, I know you have to get that letter of mark from that pig in that residence behind you. Better hurry, this thing blows in 15 minutes. And we're making our escape through the colony. Go, 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 go! Marquis laughed, turning and shooting his flintlock, killing a soldier from Cortez. Yes, I had that, amigo. Cortez snickered in the fight. I spun to Daniel, Tim, and Finn. Tim, Daniel, run to the armor and grab as many musket balls and swords you can find. Finn, come with me into the household. I watched Daniel and Tim rush across the yard, hacking at soldiers, blocking their way. And Daniel laughed, laughing, firing his big musket into a herd of men, taking out 3 into a bloody guts. Come on, I screamed. Finn ran behind me, cocking his musket, and I cocked mine, knowing the powder was set. I darted up the stone steps and kicked open the white doors with my right boot. We stormed into the fancy house, lined with golden chandeliers and violet carpets. None of the servants were here, so I assumed they had run out. He must be in the study, Finn said. We ran through the house, muskets drawn, our boots echoing our pace. Me and Finn charged down the hallway, lined with white marble columns and a polished wooden floor into an open foyer, of a wooden banister twirling up to the 2nd floor. 3 green jackets came sprinting down, weapons drawn. Finn leaped forward, clinging swords with one of the guards, while I slung my musket bayonet into the gut of another man who fell down to the marble in a pool of blood. The other soldier slashed his sword downward, and I pushed up my musket as they both collided. I swung my musket to my left, and the sword skewed away from the soldier's hand. He looked in fear as I stabbed him down into the wooden steps. Finn stabbed the man in the side and then took the back of his head and smashed it on the wooden rail 3 times until his face caved in. He stumbled back, huffing, as I aimed my gun up the stairs. Our boots sloshed through the blood as we jogged up the stairs, for we only had about 8 minutes until the carriage blew up, destroying the courtyard. I reached the top of the stairs, aiming my musket ahead of me, my long brown hair down to my neck. Finn trailed behind me, his musket drawn. At the top of the stairs, a long wide hallway stretched to the end, with the doors of white on either side. A single window was at the end of the hall, the sun shining through the casting glow in the hall. I nodded to check the door, closest to our right. Finn kicked it open and ran through, aiming his musket wide. No one was in it, just lovely furniture. I shoved my shoulder into the next one beside me and swept my gun through the room. No one was in there. I looked at Finn. Maybe everyone fled when they heard Marquis come on in with his crew. Finn shrugged. Suddenly, a servant maid casually opened a door 2 doors down from us. She was carrying folded towels in her arms and wore a black and white dress. A cap was adorned on the top of her black head. She then saw us standing there. She screamed, fainted, and dropped the clothes at her feet and clanked onto the floor out cold. Me and Finn looked at each other and shrugged and continued down the hall. We checked 3 of the rooms to find them empty. We came to the one at the end and kicked it in. It swung open from the kick, and we saw Van der Verlita scream in terror at us entering. "You damn pirates!" he stammered in fear as we aimed our weapons at him. I'm sure he heard the fighting outside in the courtyard, for I could hear the faint musket pop and screams of sword ringing in the air. This was a study, which was adorned with bookshelves surrounding the walls, a writing desk in the back with multiple letters scattered about it, and an ink pot with a quill. A fire was going in the fireplace with the rod to move around the firewood, sitting in the flames. A yellow couch was to my left with fluffy purple pillows, and the blue carpet was spread about the room besides the redwood floor. Van stood there shivering in fear. "How did you escape?" he growled at us. "Simple. Our friend got word we were being held captive here and decided upon himself to save us. I said in hatred towards the man. This is an outrage! We are pirates! Murderers against the high seas! He yelled. Quiet, you fat pig! Van yelled, slamming the butt of his gun into the fat man's jaw. Van der Vliet stumbled to the wood floor, clutching his jaw. He rolled like a fat, chubby roller he used to spread out dough in the kitchen and sat up, spitting blood out. I gazed at the writing desk to see the letter of marque upon it, dressed with scarlet ribbons and seals. We needed his signature. Sign it, I said to him. Sign what? He croaked. The damn letter of marque. We need your signature, you damn fat cook. Sign it! I screamed, aiming my musket at him, cocking it. Van der Vliet had made no effort to resist. He had trouble standing up from Finn's musket blow, as he tried to stand staggering on his own stubby legs. As he stumbled to the writing desk, I ran to the window as Finn watched him. I peered down into the courtyard to see Daniel and Tim both in sword fights back to back with Marquis and Jeb, as they kicked, slashed, and shot green-jacketed soldiers to the ground. Cortez was busy securing the carriages and dragging powder kegs, letting the powder run and spread across the mansion, towards the mansion, and hurling the wooden barrels up to the front of the mansion. He was going to blow the whole place sky high. Looked back to the writing desk to see Van stumble. Finn caught him in anger and threw him onto the writing, and Van knocked his head on the edge of the desk and plopped onto it with both hands. Sign it now! Finn cried, aiming the muzzle against the back of his head. Van quickly reached for his inky quill and spread out the letter of marque. He swiped his quill across the letter, signing his signature. Once he was done, he held it up and Finn snatched it to check it out. It's his writing! We got it! Come on, Henry, we don't have much time! Finn gestured, meaning the carriage of kegs. Hold on. We must teach this man a lesson, I said. Shut the damn doors. Henry, what about the carriage? It's going to blow up! Finn cried, worried. We got time. Shut the doors, I said. Finn nodded and handed me the letter of marque. As Finn closed the doors, I read Van's cursive signature and saw it was legible in the Order of the Admiration of Denmark, the Dutch colony. I folded it neatly and put it in my breeches. Van scrambled up, backing towards the fireplace in the back. What are you going to do to me? He pleaded. Please, have mercy. Have mercy? I cried in anger. After you enslaved us, killed and tortured our friend Will, made us slave away in the cold and heat for 4 months, and we did nothing wrong. I kicked the desk chair at him, and it flew, striking him in the side, and he tumbled to the ground crying. This fat old man deserves to die for what he did to us. He needs to pay for all that he has done to me and my mates. Knife, I said. Finn reached into his pants and pulled a long dagger. He threw it from his side to me, and I cut the steel, setting the musket down. I quickly walked over as he tried to scramble away, but he was too fat and too slow. As he tried to crawl away and stand, I kicked him back down, and he yelped in pain. I raised my hand and stabbed the knife deep into his kneecap. He cried in such pain he almost passed out, barely able to pay attention to anything in the room. Blood seeped out of his black pants. I left the knife in and kicked him in the face, his teeth flying high. Hold him, Finn! I screamed. With pleasure, sir. Finn laughed. Get away from me, you swine! Van yelped, but Finn kicked him in the face again, and blood splattered to the wood. As Finn planted Van's arms on the ground to keep him still as he tried to scramble away, I walked over and pulled out the burning, sizzling hot iron rod. Rip his shirt open, I muttered. No! Stop it! Stop this at once! Van cried in fear. Finn ripped open his button shirt and the buttons rained down, bouncing on the floor. Van tried to get up, but I kicked him in the ribs. Finn held him down and grinned. This is for enslaving us! I yelled and stuck the burning tip to his chest of fat nipples. The rod sizzled and melted his skin as he wiggled and screamed with such agony and such disdain it scared me a little. Smoke arose from his chest, and I removed it to see a burning red-hot circle on his melty skin. Open his mouth! I yelled. No! He yelped, but Finn punched him in the jaw, making his head fly sideways. Hold out his fat tongue! I screamed. Finn reached into the big mouth of the fat man and pulled out his slimy pink tongue and held it flat. For Will! I yelled and stuck the burning, sizzling rod into his tongue. Van der Vliet's eyes rolled into his head as he screamed, and his screams were muffled, and his tongue was a black, charry rectangle. Then Finn took a knife and cut off his tongue and drew him into the fire. Good night, Sir Van der Vliet, Finn yelled and fired a musket shot into his head. blood splashing onto his shirts, rising in the air and then plopping onto the floor. His head opened up, revealing his old brain. Finally, he was done with. I heard more soldiers coming up the stairs and we were running out of time. I dropped the burning metal rod and me and Finn ran to the white door. I loaded my musket as Finn reloaded his. We stood on either side of the white door, facing each other. Ready? I asked. Ready, he yelled. I nodded, then we both kicked open each door. We tumbled into the hallway as 5 soldiers came into, firing off shots as we dove behind columns as the musket pot hit up the white marble pillars. I aimed my musket across the side of the marble and fired, taking one man out, making him fly back down the stairs. I sat back, my back against the marble, pouring the powder into the barrel and stuffing the musket ball. I cocked my musket again and appeared to see Finn aiming his flintlock pistol, taking out 2 more soldiers as bullets hit up the window glass at the end of the hall. I'll take him! Find a way out! I'll meet you outside! Finn yelled. Wait, Finn! I screamed, but he had already ran at the 2 soldiers, taking on sword and pistol combat with both. I ran around the marble pillar and kicked open the door and closed it behind me. The room was dark, except for the faint light that shone through the window to my left by the bed lined with golden curtains. I cocked my musket. I heard the bed bouncing and the faint moan of a man and woman. I stopped in my tracks. Who dares spy on me? I heard a female voice and recognized the voice. It was Katina's, the woman who had lied about me raping her in the tavern before we were arrested. I walked to the side of the bed and aimed my musket at her. Her eyes widened. It's that pirate! Pirate! She screamed. I then saw a man beneath her. Her pale white breasts were wide and thick and sweaty, and she was riding him like a steed. The man beneath her was a strong, white, masculine body. She leaped off his penis, which his pubic hair was drenched in sex cum, and tried to grab a hold of me. But she was so weak that I knocked her sideways, and she stumbled to the floor naked, her buttocks jiggling as she went down. I turned to the man and noticed it as Slow John. He clutched a knife in his right hand. Leave, he muttered. Katina laid on the floor in shock, and I could hear the muffled screams of the fight on the courtyard through the window. This was the man who had ravenously beaten my friend William Stanley and hung him on display. I launched forward, pulling out my sword and sliding it forward. Slow John was no sword fighter, for all his victims were brought to him beaten and chained. He was no match for my sword. He held the blade low with his right hand. He jabbed the knife at me, but I was quicker, jumping, planting my right boot onto the bed mattress and slashing his wrist, splitting the sinews, making the knife fly away. Blood cried out, and he had no time to react. I stabbed the sword into his white bare chest, and it sank deep into his heart, all the way to the pommel. We stood there locked together in the bed with my sword in him. Then his penis wilted like a dead flower, and his yellow, beady preacher eyes rolled into his head. He sank to his knees. For will of my fallen mates, I said in rage and yanked the dripping red sword out of his bloody chest. I turned to Katina, who stood naked in fear and screamed in a high-pitched voice. In fear of her alerting the other guards, I ran at her as she tried to break to the door for help. I got hold of her wrist. Let me go, you pirate! She cried and grabbed a vase of flowers and smashed it onto my head. I cried, stumbling back, disoriented, as she slipped my hand and began to run, but I was faster. I ran at her and tackled her naked body. We plopped to the floor and my face hit straight between her breasts, and they felt warm and supplely like smooth pearls. Get off me, she wailed. You nasty seaman! She kicked me in the groin and then slapped me as I rolled over her. She tried to get up, but I swung my sword at her legs, cutting through her calves. Blood ran down her legs as she fell from the injury, screaming. I then crawled across the floor, sat up, and jabbed the blade between her breasts. She stood there, mouth wide open from shock, and I pulled the bloody blade from her chest. She then took a dying breath and fell into my arms naked. I pushed her body off me and stood up. Go to hell, you old bitch, I said to her dead body. Now that these two, plus the governor, were dead, and we had to make our escape through the colony, I ran to the window, slipping my sword back in its seat, and grabbing my musket, I smashed the window open with the butt of the gun. I climbed through the broken glass out of the dark romantic room and jumped over the windowsill. My body fell into the shingle roof as I gazed past my boots, as I slid on my butt down the roof towards the ground. My musket in both hands as I slid, I could see men running around in every direction, dodging musket fire. My body dropped off the roof and I fell down to the grass, rolling, catching myself as I fell to my side. I stood up, aiming my musket and fired a shot at the soldier about to stab Finn in front of me in the distance. He had made it out. The soldier fell and Finn raised his sword in the air. Boy, you made it! He screamed. The courtyard was littered with 200 men, with Marquis and Vanderbilt's men hacking at each other with a musket, dagger, and mallet. Blood was spreading on the grass blades, and the blue sky in the November wind was filled with white smoke from guns and powder. I watched Jeb jump up, kick a soldier in the face mid-air, roll, stand again, and slash at the ground. I could see Finn and Daniel sprinting across the courtyard, carrying about 10 muskets and a sack of powder to the gates. Daniel saw me and he met eyes across the yard. "Come on, Henry!" He yelled, waving his hand as Tim trailed behind him with powder kegs on his shoulders. I grinned, seeing they were able to overcome the armor and get more supplies. Marquis slashed at a man who was trying to reload his musket and yelled, "40 minutes to ship brawls, gentlemen! Let's hurry this up! I got the bubbling red wine awaiting me on my ship!" He cackled, scowling at the soldier. I started out a run until Hugo Bernard and his hounds appeared from the armory. They must have taken shelter from the fight. He let the hounds slip from the leashes, and they came hurling at me at lightning speed. "Catch him!" Hugo laughed. They raced to me in a silent rush, side by side, covering the courtyard like a pair of whippets. "Henry, dogs!" I heard Jeb Gordon hoot up the musket fire. His warning gave me enough time to face them. I saw the dogs worked as a team, and one leaped from my face while the other went for my legs. I lunged forward as the dog leaped up in midair at me and set my blade point into the back of the dog's throat, where the joints met the soldier's shoulders. The flying weight of the dog drove the blade in through the heart, through the lungs, and into the guts. Even though the hound was dead, and the momentum of the jump made me stagger back, the other hound bit into my left shin and screamed as I fell down. My shoulder crashed into the cobble, but when I tried to get up, the hound yanked me down and started to grip on me. I thought his teeth grazed my bone. "My hounds!" I heard Bernard yell. "You are hurting my little darlings!" He pulled his sword and rushed at him. Again, I tried to rise, but the dog hurt me. Bernard had reached me now and raised his sword.
I understand that this part is a little hard to hear what I'm saying. In the audiobook. Okay. Sorry. Sorry, guys.
Sword to his full weight above my unprotected head. "You bastard!" he roared, swinging the sword down. I saw the blow coming, and I rolled aside just as the blade struck the cobble just behind my ear and shot sparks. He lifted the sword again. Bernard was so engrossed with me that he didn't see Daniel hitting a brick in his head. As he was about to strike my head again, the brick hit his hip and he staggered backwards. With a violent effort, I hauled myself up into a sitting position, and before the hound could drag me again, I stabbed the base of its neck, driving the blade at the angle between the shoulders to its heart. The beast let out an agonized howl and released its grip on my leg, staggering in a circle and fell over dead. I checked my leg, which hurt, and blood oozed from the dog bite, but I was able to stand up and still run. I ripped a piece of my shirt off and tied it around my wound and stood up. Once I hauled myself to my feet, Bernard rushed at me. "You killed my beauties!" He was mad with grief and hacked at me, a wild, uncontrolled blow. I turned it effortlessly aside and let it fly an inch past my head. "You filthy pirate, I'll cut you down!" Bernard gathered himself and rushed in again. With the same apparent ease, I deflected the next thrust. "You remember what you and your dogs did to Oliver?" I shouted at him. I feinted high left, forcing Bernard to open his guard in the mid-line, and then like a bolt of lightning, I thrusted the sword home. The blade took Bernard just under the sternum and sprang half its length out of his back. He dropped his sword and fell to his knees. "The depth of Oliver is pain!" I screamed at him, placed my boot on his chest, and against my resistance, pulled my blade back. Bernard toppled and lay beside the carcasses dying out. "Come on, Henry!" Daniel shouted as I watched Carr, Tim, Jem, Finn, Marquis, Cortez, and the other French sailors head towards the castle gate out to the street. "The magazine! She's gonna blow!" Tim screamed, ushering me to run with his sword. I took a hold of my bloody sword and sprinted across the courtyard past the sizzling powder gas, on top of the carriage in the building. I joined my mates and the 100 French sailors running to the gates of the castle. Daniel tossed me a new musket already loaded and cocked his too. I heard the sizzle of a powder charge and turned back to see the carriage exploded into a gulf of black powder, no one staying in the wood. The wheels spun off and rolled across the yard, one rolling behind me on fire and smashing into the stone. The fire sped on the trail of kegs and reached the top of the building stairs. The whole residence exploded, and a rain of marble, stone, and glass rained down, and the whole building was swept up in a gulf of fire. That was the end of that horrible nightmare. We blasted out onto the street as the whole colony was under fire. Many green-jacketed Dutch soldiers fired upon us in the streets. We took cover behind the stone wall just outside the burning castle gates. I fired my musket, hitting a soldier in the head, making him fall dead. As we evaded cover behind the walls, his musket shot hit up the air, and smoke filled the air. Daniel turned to me. "Glad you made it, lad." I watched Marquis engage in a sword combat with a green-jacket soldier. The soldier swung left, but Marquis ducked it and slashed his blade into his gut and tackled the man in front of me. And then I shot the soldier in the face, ending him. Marquis shot up at me. "You want to get the letter?" Marquis asked me. "Aye," I smiled, and everyone heard me. I looked back over the musket pop of the burning castle. "I knew we'd burn it down," Jeb smiled. I turned back to the street, and we engaged in a shootout with muskets for a few minutes, with the soldiers dodging bullets and powder flares. I heard the clatter of a carriage wheels and gazed behind me to see Tim and Finn driving the carriage with 6 mighty greys ahead, dragging the contraption to us. Tim had the reins in his hand as Finn fired his musket from the coachman's seat, hitting a man from a window in a tavern, who plummeted out the window and crashed on top of another carriage. "We stole the carriage!" Tim laughed as musket shot whisked over our heads. Come on, gents! My ship is in the harbor. We have to make it there." Marquis grinned. "Cortez, let's go, amigos." Cortez grinned. Daniel climbed up, letting Finn climb down into the carriage with Jeb, Marquis, Kat, and Cortez. Tim rode on top of the carriage, sitting on top with his legs dangling off the edge, firing his musket at the musket fire ahead of us. I sat next to Daniel in the seat on top of the carriage, and Daniel grabbed the reins. "You ever drive a carriage before?" I asked him. "Nope," he said. "Not once." "Oh, great. I feel so safe," I said. Daniel whacked the reins and the horses whined their heads back and dragged the carriage forward. I aimed my musket from the coachman's seat and pierced the belly of a Dutch lad. The carriage went rocketing and clattering under the archway of the gates across the bridge, over the moat, and onto the street. Suddenly from behind us, I heard the rest of the kegs explode, and a shockwave of disrupted air swept over us like the drop of a lion spear. The horses reared back and plunged in terror, and I was lifted off my feet and clung desperately to the traces and looked back. A tower of doom-colored smoke rose swiftly, and revolving upon itself, shot through with dark flames and scraps of debris and wreckage. In the midst of this plume of destruction, a single human body cartwheeled 100 feet through the sky. Civilians ran away from us in fear, keeping their children away from our speeding carriage on the cobble. Musket shots still rang from all around the town, trying to hit us as my mates inside the carriage fired through the windows of the ride. "For Sir Henry and King Charlie!" Daniel yelled, and all the rest of us yelled with the excitement of our stand. Although I looked back and saw the soldiers' barracks weren't touched by the explosion, I knew the brats had been built by the same heavy stonework, and almost certainly had withstood the blast. 200 men were housed there, 3 companies with green jackets, and even now they were probably recovering from the blast. Soon they would be pouring out of the castle gates in full pursuit. But also, where was Colonel Cornelius Schroeder? The carriage pounded onto the street at a gallop. Ahead ran a mob of escaped convicts. They were scattering in every direction, some leaping over the stone wall of the company gardens and heading for the mountains, others running to the beach to find a boat to which to make their flight. Out on the street were a few stunned townspeople and house slaves who were aboard at this time of the afternoon. They gawked in amazement at the tide of us pirates, and at the rolling cloud of smoke that enveloped the castle, and then even at this carriage, festooned with talented men and outlaws and pirates, screaming like madmen and brandishing their weapons. As the carriage bore down them, they ran away. People screamed, "The pirates have escaped from the castle! Run! Run!" spreading the alarm. The cry was taken and shouted up through the huts and homes of the settlement. I could see the slaves and braver souls and take-up muskets popping at us from high from the cottage windows as we rode by, but the musket ball didn't reach us, but was too far, and the slaves ran after us to join our bloodthirsty pirate crew. The carriage swept past the first of the buildings, following the road to the harbor. They riveted back in fear, for Daniel was pushing them too fast as their sweating coat dripped. "Slow down, damn you! You'll blow the horses before you get past the town!" I shouted at Dad. "Never driven a coach before, lad! Trying my best!" He yelled back. The team of Greys were bolting through the cobble as the wheels screeched.
One sec, sorry. It's my favorite scene, is the carriage part. It's just fun. I don't know. I'm so sorry, guys. Promise that will happen again.
They were sweating and snorting from the speed, but were far from spent. As soon as Daniel got a hold of the harness to the team of Greys, I turned my head and faced the 4 lads inside the wheel. "Lads, stay sharp. We are probably going to have infantry approach," I screamed. "Hi, Henry," Finn smiled, firing his musket out the window, hitting a single running after a soldier to death. "Give him what for, laddies," Jeb yelled, and we all screamed and cheered together. I sat up to see Tim smoking a cigar, loading his musket as he sat, his legs hanging off the edge of the bouncing carriage as we rode on. He cocked his gun, smoldering the fuse with a cigar, threw the cigar away, and aimed his long barrel, taking down 2 men from the common windows as we rode by. "Will there be soldiers in our way?" Tim called over the wind.
There are usually guards at the first bridge, and there is always a patrol by the almond hedge. We'll shoot them."
Carr shouted up from the left window. One could see the marshland lagoon that broke to the first bridge into the harbor coming close. We had maybe a mile and a half before we reached it. "Were the rest dead in the burning household?" Marquis called out. "Aye, back to hell with them!" I yelled and they grinned with me. My long hair flowed down past my head from the wind as we rode on. I saw Tim rise up on the top of the carriage and pointed at the gravel path from the distant street. "Horsemen coming at a gallop!" He shouted in worry. "So soon?" Daniel asked, shading his eyes. "I not expected the pursuit so soon." "The cavalry?" Marquis asked. "Have no fear, lads. There are no more than 20 horses in the whole colony, and we have 6 of them." Cortez smiled. "Cortez is right. 'Tis only 1 horseman," I screamed. The rider was leaving a pale ribbon of dust in the air behind him, leaning forward over his mount's neck as he drove the animal to its top speed, using the whip in his right hand to flog it onwards. He was still far off, but I recognized him from the sash that flowed out behind him with the speed of the gallop. "Sweet Mary, it's Schroeder! I knew he would join us." I laughed. "The idiot comes to fight us alone. His brain he lacks, but a cargo full of guts he has," Finn shouted. I pulled out my sword and Daniel saw me ready to go after him. He had lied about us in the front of the whole colony and caused this nonsense. He needed to pay. Daniel eyed me, his black hair flying behind him. "Don't you think of going back to give him satisfaction? You will place us all in risk." "I know you're worried about me, but things have changed, Dan. I can beat him. I'm sure of it in my heart," I said, and Dan looked at me proud. The months on the walls had toughened me, and Dan could see my strength growing in my confidence. "Leave me to this business, and I'll round back to you guys in the harbor," I yelled. "No, Henry," shouted Dan. "Maybe you could best him, but not with that leg bitten to the bone. Leave your feud with the Dutchman for another time. We need you with us." Daniel had got more wiser on these months with stonework walls. "We trust you," Finn cried.
"Stay with us, sir,"
I heard Cal yell. "Hi, Henry. If you let Jean, who am I going to dine and drink wine with?" Marquis cackled. My eyes flicked at Schroeder behind us, and I hesitated. You're wounded in your leg, Tim yelled. I looked down at the blood and pale lip oozing from the dead puncture wounds. Hold the reins, Daniel said, ushering a harness to me. What, why? I cried. Take the reins. I'll take care of this one. Daniel grinned and I took the reins from him. I gripped the harness and pulled back, feeling the horses resist for a second, but then they launched forward at the gallop. Daniel took Tim's long musket from his hands. Daniel then dropped from the top of the carriage and took a step with his boot on the pedestal as I kept the carriage steady enough. Daniel leaned against the carriage, aiming the long musket at Schroeder. Daniel checked the burning matchbox and priming pan. Stop! Schroeder yelled at earshot and pulled the bell-muzzled pistol from his sash and held the matchlock in the wind so that the smoldering match flared. Then he lay flat along the horse's neck with his pistol arm stretched out. Out of my way, you oaf! He yelled at Dan and fired. His right arm was thrown high by the discharge and a wreath of blue smoke swirled around his head. The bullet hit the carriage near Daniel's side, but he missed. Daniel didn't even flinch and held his aim. The horses reeled forward. Daniel, shoot him now! Steady, he said calmly. Schroeder threw aside the pistol and drew his long sword from its scabbard. The gold inlay glinted in the sun. I'll cut your teeth with it, he yelled. Well, it's not very nice, Marquis muttered. Daniel held his aim and snapped the lock. For an instant, I thought Schroeder would gain up on us, but a spurt of flame and silver smoke, the musket fired. Daniel had aimed for the horse's chest. The bullet shot clean through the chest, splattering the ground's coat with blood, and the bullet tracked through the steed's chest, out of the back of its neck, and snapped into the face of Schroeder. Blood flew from his face, and he flew off the steed as it collapsed forward, and sent him sailing overhead, face planted, dead in blood and mud. Daniel tossed the musket back to Tim